Hello everyone, this is China Paradigm, where we, Dashi Consulting, interview seasoned entrepreneurs in China.
Hello everyone, I'm Matthieu David, the founder of Dashi Consulting and this podcast, China Paradigm. And today I am with Alvin Foo. I've been interacting with you through LinkedIn because I saw your post. I saw posting about the digital industry and so on. You are the managing director of Reprise Digital for China. And you have been involved with the digital industry, mobile for a long time, since 2006 in China, with Nokia, first as head of China for Nokia Interactive, then at head of mobile for Google, before I believe Google left China for some time because I heard that they would come back. And after that, you have been involved as an advisor for many organizations and companies like SXSW, the big conference of the US, but also BQ, and you have worked on some ICO, and that's something actually I like to know more. The name of the company, if my notes are correct, is NOIZ. You worked on the ICO or advised on the ICO. So currently, as far as I understand, Reprise Digital is present in more than 42 countries, 72 offices, close to 3,000 employees, and a lot of awards, close to 200 awards. So thank you very much for being with us, Alvin. Could you tell us about the size of Reprise Digital in China and what you precisely do to differentiate yourself and an agency compared to others?
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks again for the invite, for coming on board on this opportunity to speak on digital China. Reprise is a very young company. Not young if you have included the time that it served as a business unit under the IPG Media Brands, but as a company, it's been around for I think 2003. So that before that was being acquired into Media Brands, and subsequently it became a business unit. And obviously a year ago it went independent. So right now the entire company that's actually part of the Media Brands group has about slightly under 100 people. So mainly all digital savvy, because this was a first agency within Media Brands that is actually being designed and made and structured as a digital agency, i.e. serving all the digital channel like search, e-commerce, social, and what have you. So everything that was part of Media Brands that was serving as a business unit now is actually parked under the Reprise that is actually hosting all the digital expertise, right, that will serve all our clients across the IPG Media Brands client.
What do you call a network agency? I saw that you are describing yourself, Reprise, as a network agency. What is a network agency?
Now, when you look at part of a group called the Interpublic Group, so Interpublic Group is actually one of the 4A's global communication companies. Obviously, we also compete with we have competitor like WPP Group, Omnicom Group. Omnicom is a company I came from before IPG. So, and obviously France, there's a very big 4A's agency called Publicis. So each and every one of us, right, we are part of this very big group that below the group, right, has got lots of these agencies, some serving creative, some serving PR, and like us, we are purely in the media space. So again, all these are actually part of the entire Interpublic Group. So Reprise is actually parked under the media part of the IPG Media Brands Group.
Okay, I see. You mentioned, the website of Reprise Digital is mentioning that compared to other agencies, other digital agencies, you are not doing siloed marketing. You are going from one platform to one other platform, being consistent, as I understand, in terms of message and using different platforms, not as in a silo. Could you explain us more why you insist so much on the website about not doing siloed marketing?
No, the context of silo marketing is because when even when we were looking at advertising before, right, advertising has always been just looking at one channel. So it could be looking at just purely search, purely social, purely just maybe traditional media and what have you. So in the past, right, everyone has been looking at this separately. So what we have done within Reprise was to then put everything together and to look at it holistically, right? And then to see and all channels. I mean, at the end of the day, advertising is advertising. I mean, when you look at all the different channels that we use, from search, from programmatic, from social, it's still part of advertising. Whether it's a TV commercial that you see on TV, or whether that you see a commercial on YouTube, we have got different business units serving a different channel. And that's where I use the term silo, right? Because you're looking at advertising silo, but effective when you look at a marketing standpoint from a marketers, right? What they really want is someone who can advise them and say, you know, I have a business objective and I need to achieve this business objective. What should I do on marketing? What should I do on advertising? And that's where we want to come in, right? And be able to explain and also, you know, guide our clients in terms of looking at advertising holistically, and not to look at just side or talking about specifically just search or even social, whatever. So again, these days when we look at advertising, just purely advertising. I mean, advertising, and what we use at our technology buzzword like the AI, blockchain. These are purely just, you know, the tools that we use. But the main most important thing that we need to look at, what's objective. So objective first, then channels later.
Could you describe a couple of cases, or one or two cases, which illustrate this approach, which is not siloed, meaning you're not going to do only search, on only Facebook, or only social, on only programmatic, but connecting them for being seen by the audience, basically being understood by the audience. Would you have a Chinese example in mind?
Now, I won't want to quote the name of the company because I'm not privy to quote, but I can tell you it's a very big Japanese global brand, electronic brand. So we are actually handling the entire media spend for this company. And this company, what we basically do for them prior to that was we used to handle everything on traditional. So they've actually gone from very traditional advertising into digital, but it has taken them, you know, at least, you know, I think the transition was, I think 3 years to move from traditional to digital. So becoming more digital savvy. And then from digital, it took them, right, another 2 to 3 years, right, to go from really entirely digital and e-commerce. Okay, so what was previously a company that was really focusing on traditional, right now from digital, so digital would also look into now if there's a need because now they're becoming more and more e-commerce centric. We have gone into providing a more and more e-commerce solution. So it's not about what we want to sell them, or what we want to position them is in where their audience are. So if their audience are looking at them or searching on them more on e-commerce, then we would then strategize in a way that, or even plan in a way that, you know, their spending and their advertising is being, you know, spent on e-commerce. Now if you look at, they used to spend, imagine this, think of it, right, many years ago they like 100% on traditional media. So this was the TV days, this was the print days, right? Now almost no spending. And imagine this is a global, you know, Japanese, you know, electronic brand that used to spend so much on traditional, now spend almost no spend on traditional, and now very geared towards digital. And like 70% of that spend, now 70% of digital spend are on e-commerce. So a company has gone from traditional to digital, and within that digital, like 70% spend on e-commerce. So e-commerce, I would mean like, you know, companies like platforms like Alibaba, platforms like Jingdong, platforms like Suning. These are now their major spend. So this spend used to be on traditional, and has gone into digital, and before going into e-commerce. So you see the transition of how it moves right from one end to the other. Is as a result of where we think, you know, the customers and audience are. So Indians buying already. So now when you look at how we plan, is that we don't plan as in, oh, we should be buying on this publisher, we should be buying on that publisher, right? So now it becomes very audience-based centric, where we look at where are your audience. So your audience are on commerce, more money on commerce.
So the way you're going to work is to first identify clearly where your audience is, then identifying the touch points with this audience. Are they more on Weibo? Are they more on WeChat? Are they more on a specific app? Maybe to do display on this specific app with maybe Cheetah Mobile, who has so many apps, for instance. And you are reaching out to them because the audience is over there. That's what you do. But that means if the audience is on TV, you would go back to TV. That's what it means as well, right?
Obviously, I'm not discounting the fact that there are several of our clients are still spending money on TV, not substantially, because a lot of the TV spend has gone into spending on smart TV. These are the OTT, the OTV. So a lot of if you look at the transition of TV now before, nobody wants to watch TV because it was the dumb television box, right? Nobody wants because it was not interactive. But of late, right, for the last 2 years, people has gone back to the living room again because the TV now gets more interactive. The content gets better, and the TV are connected. So the dumb box that became smarter has also encouraged and motivated family to get back to the living room, and therefore, I'm not saying that people are actually still spending money on TV, just that, the TV format now is actually OTT format, the smart TV format, right? So if you ask me from my context in advertising as a marketer, right, you should be spending your money where your audience are. You should engage with them where they are, wherever touch point that they are actually using. So it could be what you're saying, Weibo, WeChat, you name them, right? So it's no longer by channel in terms of, we spend money because it's publisher based, right? Now it's really has gone into, engaging with where your audience are and really, creating that passion, creating that desire for them to really engage with your brand.
Okay. What level of granularity will you go in terms of platform? You would think about WeChat, Weibo, and so on, or you would even think about partnering with specific apps, specific KOL, and so on. We talk a lot about influencers and KOL. What level of granularity, meaning level of precision, you would go in terms of audience, defining the audience?
Now, again, when you use the term precision, right, then we use techniques like programmatic, right? That we can do targeting, audience targeting. That's one.
Okay.
Right? We also use influencer marketing, or the more popular Chinese term KOL is one that we use a lot because it's actually very effective, and because of the nature of the Chinese consumer that's really based on following someone. And we use that a lot, and KOL marketing is actually very powerful, and coupled with the fact if you combine them with platforms like Toutiao, right? Douyin, right? And also short video live streaming, and you combine them together with KOL marketing, right? That's really powerful. So again, these are very tactical, right? I mean, once you decide on where your audience are, right? If it is on a specific platform, so how do you then use that platform? Some of the platforms like Douyin, right? It's very social based and very KOL driven, right? And that will very well in terms of using KOL instead of using just a regular banner. So again, the way that we plan is audience based. And then we decide, where your audience are, and then we target them using respective channel. And then the granularity will always depend on, all these tactical things that there are various possibility, and then we'll decide with the client, which are the best possibility, which are the better routes to take.
Douyin is pretty new. I mean, by ByteDance, it's known in the West as TikTok. You mentioned that the way to interact with Douyin is not through banner, but through influencers. Could you tell us more about more comprehensive way of interacting with Douyin and influencers of Douyin? Is it a display of the product in a video? Is it creating a video with influencers? How do you leverage Douyin? I feel a lot of brands don't know yet how to leverage Douyin because it's not as simple as spending money on Weibo or WeChat now.
Right. we have a couple of clients who have actually tried, and so far, from the performance that has been presented, it's actually very encouraging. Yeah. The thing is that because Douyin has gone on to become a very popular platform for especially people living in the second and third and fourth tier cities, because as you know, Chinese people has got ample time, and they are engaging with him, and and when you look at Douyin, right, it's actually very contagious. I mean, you can, and people who start to look at it, right, you can, and you will keep on watching it, nonstop. And also because powered by AI and also personalization, that's really the ByteDance turf, right? That you will be continually served, right, with a lot of content that's actually very relevant to you. And the kind that we do with them is that again, when you go into a KOL, right? Again, the KOL selection will depend very much on the kind of brands that you're working with. I mean, there are some KOL who are specifically good for sort of. So again, we need to do a what we term as KOL selection. Not any KOL will work with our brand, because we need to find that affiliation, that affinity, right? Once you find the right KOL, then usually these KOL are actually KOL that's actually with Douyin. So usually when we work with Douyin, Douyin will also help us to present to us, right, the selection of potential KOL. And then together, right, we will then work out content. We will build content with the client for the video, and that video could be a short. Usually, it's a short video because Douyin is a short video platform, and then we will create those video. And the hope is that that video eventually will become. It could be very e-commerce driven. It could also be a viral video to be shared.
Mm-hmm.
So again, depending on the objective and of the client, usually. Work with Keep Douyin and then leveraging their KOL resource, right? And then deliver the message to the audience.
I understand influencers and KOL are key to work with Douyin, and as far as I understand, with the way you are describing the process, is Douyin also suggesting some KOL you can interact with, or do you find by yourself, or do you have a software like we interviewed Park Lu from some time ago, which is software to assess the different influencers? Would you use a software? Could you be more precise on this, because there's a lot of mystery on how do you find the accurate KOL. It's easy to find the stars, right? The people who are very famous, very well known. But the people who are very interesting are in the middle. They're not as expensive as the stars, and still they have an audience. How do you make sure to have the accurate ones?
KOL selection and search and selection is a lot better than before, because it used to be a black box, where nobody has an idea, and usually you would have to depend on your agency to help you search for the KOL in the past. And usually but it's better now. Now you have companies that you mentioned just now, Park Lu, right? And then obviously there's Robinate. There's also, in fact, the more popular one is actually like a tool that's actually offered by AdMaster. That's one that you can do KOL selection, and the other one is the one that we are using at our agency is a tool that we work with Tencent. So Tencent has a KOL selection tool and because Tencent have access to WeChat, right?
Yeah.
And they have access to so many KOL on their platform. And through the tool that is actually provided by Tencent, we can then search, specific KL. We can put in the requirement, we can search a KL, and then it will provide us all the data, right? Allowing us, right, to build certain insight, to build certain information, to help us, right? Number one, select. Number two, justify why we select this particular KOL. So
are you talking about Neuralink? Neuralink?
No, I'm talking about Tencent Cloud, Tencent Marketing Cloud. They have a tool that we're using right now to help us to select KOL.
Okay.
So we're using that. We picked Tencent simply because they have got a massive reach in terms of actually
I see.
All the KOL.
So your assumption is to say that a KOL will be necessarily big on a KOL generally speaking, on the digital landscape would be necessarily big on WeChat. So WeChat is the right proxy to assess KOL, because anyway, if it's big on Douyin, it will be also sizable on WeChat. This is your assumption, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's our assumption. I mean, we can't be going out to buy all the tools available in China and trying to get a size up the market. So we picked this particular tool because we think, you know, it has credential, and then obviously Tencent has got access to a big pool. Obviously, if you ask me from my standpoint, right, I mean, when you work with Weibo has its own KOL platform as well. So again, depending on the requirement, right? But we will rely on one tool that we have, and then when we work with partners like Douyin, or even when we work with Weibo, we work with their teams, right? So we can leverage their team resource, right, in terms of helping them to do, you know, KOL selection. Again, when going back to KOL, right, it's unlike the old days, right? That we want to get, you know, we want to only work with the big KOL, right? But these days, right, as you know, there's a fatigue. I mean, maybe in the past, right, you know, KOL is like, you know, the trust level was a lot higher before, but now because there's a fatigue, you know, so many brands are using it and all that. So we have gone from focusing on large KOL into what I would term as a micro influencer. So micro influencer, these are like you know, KOL who has got like, you know, a lot smaller base, but very laser focused, i.e., these are the KOL that talks about a specific topic. I'm just using examples. So it could be very specific could be talking about supplement, could be talking about health, but very specific. So we would rather, and a lot of this time when we work with some of our B2B clients, we use a lot of micro influencer.
B2B.
Yeah, B2B. We also we use a lot of micro influencers because we think, you know, micro influencer, while they have a very small reach versus the big influencer who has got like thousands and millions, right? We work with them because we think that, you know, even though, I mean, these are performance that we have seen, the result we have seen so far is that they may be small, but their conversion, or if you may say the engagement, is a lot higher than big KOL or even celebrity, right? Because I mean, go ahead.
In terms of size, what is a small or medium KOL? Is it 100,000? Is it 500,000? Is it 10,000 people following?
Again, everyone has got different definition, right? But for us, right, a micro influencer, it has to be, it's about 30 to 50,000.
Okay, 30 to 50,000.
To 50,000 followers.
Okay.
So I mean, again, this definition varies from, you know, in like people would think like people who has got 3,000, they are micro influencer, but easily 30 to 50,000. And then we will work with like many 30 to 50,000 influencer, right? So not one. So we'll pick like maybe 5. So if we add those 5 people, it could be like 250,000, but very focused, laser focused.
I see. You mentioned B2B clients. I think it's very interesting to see that B2B is also using social media in order to convert into sales. Would you mind mentioning a couple of cases on B2B marketing using influencers?
I can name you. We have this client who is actually selling, you know, like industry tools. Yeah?
Very interesting.
Like factory. These are like factory components. These are industry. They supply tools to the factories, right? And their audience is actually factory managers, like general managers, factory managers, and again, when you look at B2B, right? At the end of the day, right? Even in B2B, you're still talking to people. Whether it's B2C or B2B, you're still talking to people. The only difference is that when you talk about B2C, you're talking to the mass market. But when you talk about B2B, you have to be a lot more laser focused because you are talking to, you know, I'm talking to a factory worker, factory manager, general manager of a factory. So therefore, when you talk to these people, right, they are still consumers like the B2C, but they are more focused in terms of what they look at. So we need to pick the right KOL we need to pick the right media. Again, the B2B are also leveraging WeChat. They have a official account and all. They have all that, and then we will pick even smaller group of influencer, like someone who's very good at that specific area, say maybe like I was saying, the industry products, right? And he's like a guru, or he may be an expert in the area. That kind of people has got huge influence, and we will work with them to then retarget them. Again, B2B targets a much smaller group, but again, it's actually very high value because the items in it is a big ticket item usually.
Yeah, clearly. So you mentioned the client you have which is offering machines, selling machines, right? Industrial machines. What kind of influencer would you use in this case? Is it like an engineer who is writing a lot about the machines? Is it someone in the industry, the factory industry, more generally speaking, not specifically the machine? Could you give specific cases of KOL you may use for them?
The people that we use, I mean, again, we usually find them from the publication. So meaning when we work with publisher of a specific site, let's say the B2B that we want to target, because it's very hard for you to reach out to this one guy who is an engineer who is fascinated with that particular industry, right? So usually we access them from the some of the media that we are working with, and then they will then recommend to us that there's these 2 or 3 KOL who they work with before and who writes content, and also they are also like a micro influencer within that category. And that's how we usually so usually a lot of recommendation, right, comes from the media, because it's very hard to go and find this one guy or 2 guys who's really good at what they do, right, in that specific area. It's not like the popular KOL that we all know, but the best way to go and find them is, talk to the B2B, some of the B2B media, and I'm sure they would have access to some of these writers and also content makers.
Okay, I see. So you may go also through magazines, specialized magazines, the industry, to find some people writing articles, then reach out to them because you identify them as influencers. I see. You talk a lot about social media. You talk about you mentioned many times as influencers. We mentioned, but you rarely mention search. It's on your website. You have SEO specialists, you have SEM specialists, but you haven't mentioned so much search. And that's a question I often have from people who are interested in China. Is search dead? Can we rely on Baidu to get clients? In which industries can rely on Baidu to get clients? Or it's really now the marketplace business? The media should be spent on marketplaces plus social media, because if we look at where to spend money, there is search, which may be the oldest places. There are displays now, which would be more programmatic, and there are marketplaces like Taobao, Tmall, some way Alibaba if it's B2B, and there are influencers leveraging social media. But the first one, which is search, seems to be lagging behind in China compared to the West. What's your opinion on it?
Right. Well, I want to make one point. Actually, Reprise started as a search company. We are very strong in search, and in fact, our major revenue with the company is actually on search. So a big chunk of revenue that we do within the company is actually we work with Baidu. Obviously, there's a local Sun 360 and all that. So, but obviously, Baidu, is a big chunk. Now, number one, search is not dead. Search is definitely not dead. In fact, search has grown a lot bigger, but it has gone vertical, i.e., people are still searching in general. Who isn't, right? You are searching on WeChat. You are searching on Ctrip. You are searching on Dianping. You are searching on Baidu as well, right? The only thing that Baidu hasn't done well enough is while it has gone vertical, it hasn't captured, but they have not been effective in capturing those traffic that has gone vertical. Okay, so Baidu, Baidu is still very relevant to us. In fact, In fact, a lot of clients have, they are spending on Baidu. Some may have really shifted their budget, but in general, a lot of our clients continue to spend. We're still doing a lot of SEO and SEM. So we're running, a paid search for our client, and also we're doing a lot of SEO. So as far as the search business for us is a growing concern. But the impact to Baidu is that because a lot of those searches has gone vertical, and they did not manage to capture them. So that's why when you see the advertising grown a lot, but it has grown on Alibaba versus Baidu, right, who has actually lost a lot. Because in the past, if you look at the behavior of user, they will search on Baidu, and then Baidu will help them link to e-commerce. And these days, right, all that has disappeared because everyone just search on Jingdong or even on Alibaba. So the impact to Baidu is actually great, but they're still very relevant. I mean, relevant in terms of the other kind of searches, right? B2B is still relevant there, but they are in a very dangerous zone because the one thing that now versus global is that website is no longer very relevant. And because they are not enough now. In fact, when you look at the latest numbers, the number of website is actually, is dropping in China. So it has good. The total number of website is actually, decreasing, and that's dangerous because the entire business of search, right, is based on crawling websites, right?
Exactly.
And because of that, right, if the number of website is not growing or is not being updated, then the relevancy of Baidu search, right, will also, the quality of search, right, will also drop tremendously as well. And that's actually dangerous because, and that's why when you look at the recent the recent quarterly earnings, Baidu last night, right, dropped tremendously.
Yeah.
And in fact, their stock was dropped like 50%, right? And I think Baidu has a lot of issues that they need to go and fix, and it's a much greater problem. Moving forward, right, I think they will be very challenged. There will be some segment that they will continue to do very well, but to compete in the same league as Tencent and Alibaba, I think that that has disappeared long time ago. In fact, I always say the BAT now, the B is actually ByteDance. It's not Baidu.
Interesting. One more question about Baidu. Why do you think Google is still doing so well, even though Google is worried that some of the marketing spending is going on Amazon now? And that's certainly one of the reasons why Google invested in JD. But still, Google is predominant in advertising. And the search is very strong still in the West compared to Baidu, where you say it has its challenges. How do you analyze the differences?
No, number one, the big difference between Baidu and Google is that the quality of search on Google is many times better. You can do a concurrent search. You can take Google versus Bing versus Baidu. Take and do a search, right? You will see the quality of search like Google is like many times much better. This is not
even in Chinese.
Say again.
Even in Chinese.
In Chinese. I've tried. It's actually not bad on Google as well. I mean, now Baidu is obviously better in China because because of its ability to crawl much better than Google because of its its block in China, right? But it's not bad. But if you do like English searches or even other languages, right? Google will trump anybody on earth. So. When we even look at the quality of search, right? Let's even look at the transition in terms of search going vertical and all that. But Google is very good in terms of actually providing that search, right? And that's number one. And people in general globally still are very search centric and very reliant on Google, even when they are searching for travel. I mean, some people may go and search on Expedia, but because of the ability of Google being able to like crawl everywhere, right? And still land you on those assets, right? Because now, remember I said, right? Now, these companies, right, depends on a lot of their growth and scale depends on website. The websites are still growing globally, right? Versus China. So Google has got a greater ability to crawl this website very well. So that's why when you do search, let's say travel, when you search travel or even food on Google, Google has got the ability to pull any kind of stuff anywhere on earth quite quickly to you, and then reconnect them to you. It could be on Agoda, it could be on Expedia, it could be on anywhere because they have a website. But in China you can, because Ctrip will block, any competitor to Baidu will block Baidu. So Baidu has no access, right? So Baidu could only leverage your own expertise, right? Their own resource, right? Like, I need to build my own product, right? Like Baidu would need to go and say, I need my own TV, my own online video. I need to have my own travel company, because if I don't have my travel company, I will not be able to get travel information, because C3 will not allow me to then crawl on them. So versus Google, who have access to crawl anybody. So when you do a search, right, you can naturally. That's why even I search on, I would search on Expedia, but I always start my search right on Google on most matters. But in China, you automatically go vertical already. Oh, I want to go food, or you will use Meituan, right? But I know there's Yelp, I know there's OpenTable, but you will still search on Google. And then Google will help you connect to OpenTable and Yelp as well. So that's a huge difference, massive difference. Massive.
I believe some people are going Google and typing Amazon as well to go on Amazon.com. That's how people are Google dependent in the West. Understood. I'd like to talk about your other involvement as advisor. Yeah. Sorry.
I must admit that what Google is going to face some challenge as far as Amazon is concerned, because Amazon actually got into advertising a lot later. If you look at, this was a business that Amazon could have creamed much earlier, like how Alibaba creamed the advertising market, right? And Amazon only came into the business like 24 months ago, and then that has grown into a $10 billion business already. So that would give Google, and then Google could feel that pressure. That's why Google has gone into Google Shopping, because I'm very certain at some point, I'm quite certain, I think, you will see a situation where they're going to compete so hard that you cannot cross from each platform to another, just like China, very certain. Because once you get into a situation where you compete so hard, right, I'm very certain that at some point, Amazon will not allow you to crawl, and then vice versa, right? Like similar to China, Alibaba and Tencent, you cannot crawl each other, right? So that will happen, and I think that's going to be a lot of pressure. And if you look at the growth of advertising on Amazon is literally just taking, eating into Facebook and Facebook and Google's lunch for sure, because all your e-commerce searches, right, is going to prior to Amazon get that a business, you will search more very Amazon centric.
Yeah. And when you want to buy a Google Home device, you cannot buy it on Amazon. I think that's a signal as well that they are splitting the internet in some way.
Obviously, heading in that direction. I think a lot of people say China internet is unique, and when I look at the world, eventually if they compete down the track, right, it will be very similar, right? They will block each other for sure.
Interesting. Talking about Google before we move to the other topics I was mentioning before, do you have some information about Google coming back to China? What's your idea of what they are going to do? Are they going to provide search, so censored search compliant with Chinese law and so on? Or what's your idea on this? Because you have worked at Google, you should have some vision on it, right?
I read that they were getting a lot of disagreement and also dissatisfaction from the existing Googlers that has actually like hoping that the company will not take on that route, because it doesn't go hand in hand with Google's philosophy, right? So as of, I think there was earlier this year, they decided that they will not come back to China. And I'm not sure whether they will want to come back again in the future, even though as much as I think, China, I've always said this before, I think China is a very important market for Google. for whatever reason that they have decided, in 2009 that has, forced them to leave China. Coming back to China, while it will definitely opens up an opportunity for Chinese consumer to, Chinese internet user to access Google, but I think for them to make it, for them to be very successful, they will really need to redefine what is success for them in China, because it's already too late. I mean, I think you have seen so many companies along the way that has came to China, left, including Amazon. And for Google, the time has passed for these companies to grow in China, and especially in the area like search, also like e-commerce and all this. I mean, Alibaba and Tencent is no longer a company that it was the size of a 10 of Google or a 10 of Facebook. These companies these days are very sizable, and I think for them to even move the needle.
I'm seeing still two aspects. Google is strong and has been successful actually in China. Android is used in China, as an operating system. And the other element that has been successful for Google is export advertising, what we call export advertising. Some Chinese companies, a lot of Chinese companies actually, are paying Google to do advertising overseas, like they pay Facebook to do advertising overseas. That's something I would be very interested to have your opinion on. Are you seeing Chinese clients coming to you saying, we want to do advertising in the West and to use whatever it is, programmatic and Google search or Facebook to do advertising overseas? Do you see a trend on it?
It is a trend already. I mean, in fact, when I worked for Google in the past, the export trend actually started in 2011. But the trend that started then was really driven largely by what I would call as gaming companies. Mostly companies that were focusing on gaming. So mainly getting their apps being promoted, say, in other parts of the world, like in Asia, like in US, and that was a trend even back in 2011. And the reason was very, very obvious, was because they were able to get people to pay. So there was this paying behavior outside China versus China. China, there was no paying behavior. People want to, they want everything for free, but the rest of the world, in America, in Europe, or even Asia, people were willing to pay. Like people in Hong Kong and Taiwan has got this tendency to pay something, so they were targeting. So the trend on export has started then already. Right now, the last 3 years, the trend has moved beyond just gaming company, has gone into e-commerce. So i.e. there's this Chinese e-commerce that's actually promoting outside China. And then now you've got several other brands, like now you got the equipment manufacturer like the Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, and Huawei, who are very dominant in China, who also wants to promote. And obviously you've got the airlines. Now the trend shifting is because China's, has gone from a domestic, everyone who used to be a domestic champion now aspire to become a global champion, taking the footstep of companies like Lenovo, taking the footstep of Huawei, taking the footstep of Tencent, and more confident in themselves, and they are more ready. And the last, 3-5 years, right, a lot of these companies have actually gone beyond China and has this so-called, so the trend is getting, it is becoming bigger and bigger, and there's a huge requirement because it's very competitive in China now. So what happens when there's competition? When there's competition, right, in China, when they need to grow beyond that, right? The only thing is that they need to do is that they have to go beyond China. So a lot of companies are actually being pressured, right? That's why the export trend, right, is becoming more and more obvious for many companies. It's not just the Oppo, Vivo, Huawei. I even expect the smaller brands, right, who used to be local champions, right, you will see them, right, going export.
Where would they go first? Southeast Asia, the US, Europe? What is the dominant? Yeah.
My view is that usually, and also this would be my advice. Always try and try and target as far as you can, right, the nearest to you, and usually try and target countries, right, that speak Chinese first, right? That would be your first step. So going at countries where there's a lot of Chinese, so like Hong Kong, Thailand, there's a lot of Chinese community, right? That would be your first tier, first level, and it is also nearer to you where it's easier for you to manage, right? And not like, immediately I want to go outside China, let's go and attack the American market or even, European market. So try somewhere very close. And if you want some guidance, follow Tencent and Alibaba, right? They started with Southeast Asia. Then they've gone to India. I think these are the countries that they can. And Southeast Asia as a region is very sizable. Easily 500 million user, so customers,
Yes.
right? Base. So it's actually very sizable.
Okay, thanks. Talking about your other involvement, what I was mentioning just before we continue to talk about Google and export advertising. So you are a member of the board of advisors of SXW. You are an ICO advisor at NOIZ, ICO advisor as well at JobChain, and I'm seeing also at Robin 8. Actually, you mentioned it before. Social content marketing platform to track and assess KOL reach. How did you become advisor of so many companies?
It's also goes back to my passion. In my early part of my career, I've actually started companies. It's not that I've always been working for other people. When I was a kid, I always dreamed to become a boss man. People ask me, what would you want to become when you grow up? I say, I want to be a boss. God knows why, but maybe it was like fashionable and also sounds good to be a boss. So in fact, when I came up from university and I worked for people, and then immediately I went and jumped into starting out on my own. Obviously, the initial first two startup wasn't very successful. And obviously I didn't make it. I failed. But of all this failure, obviously there was a success. There was success at the far end. So it was because of my initial love for starting up and creating my own business that even when I came to China, after coming to China, I continued to be very active in the startup space. So i.e. either I go and mentor a company, or either that I consult a company, or either that, right, I invest in a company, help seed the company, which I've actually seeded several companies. So because of my background of actually starting up companies, that has helped me to have at least have some understanding how you build companies, right, and eventually getting into the space, helping start up, and also getting myself dirty in terms of actually starting up, because but having been here for years, where I continue to work for big companies, right, I've actually lost so much ground in terms of starting on my own that I thought maybe instead of starting on my own,
I see.
is to work with founders, right, who are building. I mean, the founders are a lot younger. If you look at most of the founders in China are actually very young people. These are the people in their 20s and 30s. I mean, I'm not so young, man. I don't think I have the stamina. But I certainly do have a bit of gray hair. So maybe, if I don't have the stamina, if I have gray hair, right, I can, use that gray hair for better purpose, help them. And then, if there's an opportunity to invest in them and grow with them. And that's how I landed myself into several of these startups and mentoring them and also advising them. And I kind of like specific area. Now, if you look at my area, I spend a great deal of time talking about blockchain. So advising blockchain, not because I just, I just happen to drop into a blockchain. I've been, spending a lot of time investigating and also researching blockchain, and eventually spoke at a lot of events because of my belief, that, blockchain is the way to go in terms of actually building a more secure platform. So that was how I got into the block. But again, it was just an area, and obviously I continue to like look into. I mean, so that's why when you look at my profile, I've always been very into, passionate about emerging technologies. So it could be blockchain, it could be artificial intelligence, which I talk about a lot about artificial intelligence, and at the same time, whatever that's emerging, because I think all this technology has an impact on brands, has an impact on marketers, has an impact on businesses. Because this will game change. All this technology will game change how we do things and how that will impact businesses. And a lot of this emerging technology will also potentially disrupt the existing business, like how internet has disrupted e-commerce, right? So my love for technology has always been looking at how that would disrupt business, how this new startup would then disrupt, an old way of doing things.
If an entrepreneur wants to have you as an advisor, what should they consider and how should they reach out to you? Is it they should consider paying your services? They should consider inviting you for lunch, for dinner? What should they consider?
Well, I don't have a I don't have a checklist though. But usually most people will contact me because they will reach out to me through usually recommendation, or either through China Accelerator or Spark Labs that I'm actually a mentor at, and then they will connect to me, and then we'll chat, and then I think the initial part is really just chemistry. That at least we don't hate each other. Right, there's some level of trust that I like his business model. That I think he's a survival. If you ask me, right, what do I look in and on to create an amazing idea? Because I don't think any idea is amazing until you execute them. And you really need, right, a true survival. And all these very successful companies, right, they are still here because of how the founders are able to die and survive, die and live, and so live and die. So continue. So you need to continuously reiterate, and that's what I look at. If I can see that in that so-called young man, or in an entrepreneur, or either in that founder, I usually want to work with it because I want to find someone who, because these kind of people will inspire me, right? And I can learn a lot from them. So when you ask me, why do I continue to do this? It's not so much because I want to make more money out of it. I mean, making money is actually a bonus, but more importantly, that I can, number one, that I can create a relationship, right, that's mutually benefit for us, that I can learn from you, and I also at the same time I can impart something to you as well. So I value that a lot more, because if you ask me, right, what is the best way to learn? I can no longer go back to the age of these guys, because I can't like go back in time. But the only way to go back in time is to work with them. When you work with them, right, they will give you a lot of ideas that you cannot imagine. So that's how I continue to stay. I mean, that's one way that I've been doing to staying relevant in the industry.
How do you interact with them? Is it like a monthly debrief? Is it on demand when needed? You can schedule the time with them. How do you work with them?
Okay, so there are times that I also like work with some of them that I meet them once every 2 weeks as well. So again, it all depends on requirement. But usually like once. So and also if there's a need be, he can always call me, right? I mean, we can always WeChat. So it's actually very fluid.
Last question, a bit more personal for the future. You are from Malaysia, and I've been in Malaysia 1 year ago with an organization called EO, Entrepreneur Organization, and I saw a lot of entrepreneurs over there. It was very impressive, very refreshing as well. Do you have any plan some time to actually contribute to the ecosystem and the digital industry from Malaysia or in Malaysia? Do you have any plan to go back to Malaysia to contribute to this growth and this ecosystem?
I have actually thought about it. I started my career in Malaysia. In fact, I started businesses in Malaysia. So it's a country that I miss to go home to. Maybe at some point. The good thing about Malaysia is that now compared to China is that the cost of operation, the cost is actually a lot lower. So if you compare to China right now versus Malaysia, the cost is very low. I have actually invested into a company that was initially based out of Shanghai. I'm not going to name the company. Who had eventually, we decided that because of cost of operation, we actually move back to Malaysia. So meaning the founder has relocated the entire operations to Malaysia to take advantage of the lower cost of people, right? You can easily get the same people like engineer or whatever, but for like at least half the price, and the cost is actually very appealing and average, and the infrastructure in Malaysia is very good, and be it access to the broadband, be it access to the global network, and also if you are looking at accessing anything else, it's actually very infrastructure is actually pretty good. So Malaysia is actually a very good place to start up if you're looking for a lower cost hub to really run a business. So yes, if you ask me, do I have plans in the future? Yeah, maybe. Very likely, because I would at some point return to Malaysia because that's home. And it's also a very good spot for any entrepreneur who wants to start something. Access to talents who can speak multilingual, like Chinese, Mandarin, Chinese, and also English, and also Malay as well. That the same language that's being spoken in Indonesia. So it's actually a very good location.
Thank you very much for your time, Alvin. It's on a Saturday morning. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. I hope everyone enjoyed the talk. Thank you for the audience to listen to us, and talk soon.